This is the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra, the highest tier Edge 30 model to come out this year, and it aims to blow away the competition with some crazy specs. But it takes more than a stacked spec sheet to win over consumers, so does the Moto Edge 30 Ultra have what it takes? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our full review. They say go big or go home, and Motorola seems to have taken this to heart with the Edge 30 Ultra. It packs the highest tier Snapdragon chipset, 125-watt fast charging, and a 144Hz refresh rate screen. But that's not all, there's also a whopping 200-megapixel main camera. Motorola has gone for a minimalistic and elegant sort of design here. The back is made of frosted Gorilla Glass 5, and you get the typical Moto logo in the center. Both the back panel and the screen curve into a thin aluminum frame. The 3-step camera bump is pretty unique and adds a bit of flair. While there is ingress protection on the Edge 30 Ultra, it isn't quite what you might expect from a flagship. It's IP52 rated against dust and light splashes. On the front is a curved 6.67-inch AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution, Gorilla Glass 5 protection, and that extra fast 144Hz refresh rate. 144Hz isn't something you see every day, and it makes your swiping extra smooth. If you want the phone to be able to dial down its refresh rate to save energy though, you'd have to be in the auto refresh rate mode, which is capped at 120Hz. The Edge 30 Ultra's display is sharp enough and is quite contrasty. There's support for HDR10+ as well. The colors aren't the most accurate here, trending toward bluish, but you can adjust them through color settings. When it comes to brightness, this panel is impressive. We measured a maximum of about 500 nits with the manual brightness slider, and this can boost to almost 1050 in auto mode when in bright sun. And the Edge 30 Ultra has a fingerprint reader located under the display for your biometrics. It's fast and reliable. For audio, the Edge 30 Ultra has a pair of stereo speakers, with the earpiece doubling as the second one. They earned a score of very good in our loudness test, and the quality is solid, with nice sounding vocals and some bass. And you can get the phone with 128, 256, or 512 gigs of storage on board, but that isn't expandable. At the heart of the Edge 30 Ultra is Android's current top flagship chipset, a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. As you'd expect, the performance in benchmarks is excellent here, near the top of the charts. There's more than enough power to handle heavy games and multitasking. But just like we've seen in other modern flagships, the thermal management here leaves more to be desired. Both CPU and GPU performance dropped off significantly during our stress tests, even after just a few minutes. We didn't see any noticeable dips during gaming though. The Edge 30 Ultra has a 4610 mAh battery inside, and battery life isn't great, but it's good. The phone was able to earn a 92-hour endurance rating in our proprietary tests. The phone counters that with some of the fastest charging speeds around, thanks to the 125-watt power delivery charger that comes in the box. With it, we were able to charge the Edge 30 Ultra from 0 to 95% in half an hour. The interface of the Moto Edge 30 Ultra is no surprise. It's the same that we've seen on all of Moto's recent phones. A pretty stock-looking Android 12 with a few Motorola features sprinkled in, and good software support too. Motorola promises 3 years of major OS updates and 4 years of security updates for the Edge 30 Ultra. You can access the proprietary features through the Moto app. These include personalization options, with which you customize the looks of your interface. There are also quite a few custom gestures that you can use if you want to. The Peak display is Moto's alternative to an always-on display. It will show you the time and notifications on the screen if you tap or move the phone. And the Edge 30 Ultra supports Moto's Ready For feature. It allows you to connect the phone to a monitor or TV to game or chat on the big screen, or even attach a mouse and keyboard to get something like a desktop experience. Now we've made it to the cameras. On the back, there's a crazy 200-megapixel main camera with OIS, together with a 50-megapixel ultra-wide cam with autofocus and a 12-megapixel 2x telephoto. And on the front, there's a 60-megapixel camera for selfies. Add it all together, you get what could be the highest megapixel count we've seen on a smartphone yet. Even though the main cam is 200 megapixels, the pixels are bin 16:1, resulting in 12.5 megapixel photos. These are very good, with excellent detail, nice exposure, and expressive colors. The white balance is a bit colder than we'd like. and while the dynamic range is good, the high contrast leaves some extremes underdeveloped. There is a 200 megapixel ultra-res mode, and sometimes you may get more detail this way, but not always. These photos also take an extra second to process and use up a lot of space. Moto calls its telephoto cam a portrait camera. You can get a defocused background behind your subject, but only if that background is pretty far away. Or you can turn on the dedicated portrait mode. It provides slightly better sharpness and detail on the subject, for some reason, and the edge detection is very good. It's not only about portraits, of course, you can snap your typical 2x zoom photos too. The quality is good, with an acceptable level of detail, lively colors, and wide enough dynamic range. These aren't the sharpest photos we've seen though, and the processing adds plenty of additional sharpening on top. The ultra-wide cam's 12.5 megapixel photos aren't amazing, but they're quite good. Colors are lively, sharpness is good as ultra-wides go, and noise is well contained. Moto again has gone for a more contrasty look, at the expense of the extremes of the dynamic range. The macro mode uses the ultra-wide camera, but zooms it in to match the main camera's field of view. While that may sound like a recipe for bad quality, it actually produces some nice results. When shooting with the main cam in low light, this is what you get if the auto night mode processing doesn't kick in for some reason. The shots are underexposed, with blown light sources and dark shadows. Where there is light to be found, there's still a good amount of detail, and the colors are well saturated. When the night mode, called night vision, comes in, either automatically or with a toggle, it brings the highlights in check and works wonders for shadow development. The darker the scene, the more dramatic the result. The sharpening gets a kick too, and noise is reduced. When shooting with the telephoto cam, if the night mode doesn't kick in, the results are a little underexposed and a bit on the soft side. Dynamic range is alright, and colors are well preserved. If the auto night mode comes in, or you toggle it on, the zoomed photos are very good, consistently sharp with good detail and well-developed shadows and highlights. Without night mode processing, the ultra-wide's photos are desaturated and have limited dynamic range. The auto night mode will kick in for most scenes though, and you get a brighter exposure, and it improves the dynamic range a lot. Selfies from the 60 megapixel front-facing cam come out in 15 megapixels. They're great, with excellent detail, wide dynamic range, and lively colors. You can record video with the main cam in up to 8K resolution at 30 FPS. The detail isn't the best we've seen for 8K, but we like the exposure and dynamic range, especially in the shadows. When recording in 4K resolution, you get a contrastier rendition with darker, less detailed shadows. Colors remain likable, and the detail is good, but not quite pin sharp. The telephoto is limited to 1080p resolution, but the quality is still pretty nice. You get pleasant colors and good dynamic range. For some reason, the ultra-wide is capped at 1080p as well. There's enough detail, but the colors are desaturated, and the contrasty look results in a narrow dynamic range. There is electronic stabilization available for all of the cameras. Both the ultra-wide and telephoto are pretty solid when it comes to smoothing things out, but the main cam is still a bit shaky when walking. So that's the Moto Edge 30 Ultra. It aims to sway potential customers with this 200 megapixel camera, extra high refresh rate, and blazing fast charging. And it actually delivers, not just in those departments, but for just a nice experience all around. What we do miss here are 4K video recording on the telephoto and ultra-wide cameras, and full ingress protection, not just splash proofing. But if you're willing to forgive those things, then the Edge 30 Ultra is a high-end phone that's worth recommending. Thanks for watching guys, and see you on the next one.